Hello and welcome back to the What the Falk Sunderland review show. It was a wonderful, sunny and enjoyable afternoon on Wearside as Nathan Broadhead made the perfect comeback by nodding in a 95th minute winner to ensure Sunderland's playoff promotion hopes received the shot in the arm it probably needed. As always, we'll be reviewing all of the talking points from the game as we look back at Sunderland's 1-0 win over Neil Harris's Gillingham. And if I sound particularly chirpy, do forgive me, but I've just watched the Mags get stuffed 5-1 live on Sky Sports. And see what you want. That's enjoyable. To join me is the ever reliable Dave, not the rave, Lawrence. Dave, how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, very well, thanks, mate.
It might be the rave because you got tanked, didn't you? Let's be honest. Unbeknown to everyone who can't see the audio, you know what I mean. Dave's just done a nice bit of raving there for us all, and it's wasted, completely wasted. Trying to find a nickname for Brad, and I felt quite bad because the only one I could get was Brad Bad Take Shot because he had a few bad takes yesterday. Don't know if you know your new nickname, Brad, or if you like it, but how are you doing, young man? You all right?
Yeah, I'm not so bad, mate. Like you just touched on, just watch the Mags get stuffed. Always a nice way to round off a Sunday before going back to work, isn't it?
It really is. It really, really is. I've got to be honest. And to break up the Holy Trinity and, of course, give a more positive take, as always, it's Sunderland Central Scotland branch man, Phil Wilson. Phil, how are you doing? You all right?
I'm all right. Do I not get a nickname then?
I was going to say Mr. Positive, mate, but I think we all are at the minute, aren't we? We sound positive.
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
Good, mate. Good. First things first, as I said in the intro, Dave, massive win in the context of the season, really. We're a day later. Obviously, people know what time we're talking about this. So, how do you assess the game?
It's kind of, we were more sprightly yesterday. I'll give us that. We didn't look. I mean, what was it? 25 shots on goal. I'm not sure how many of them were on target.
Five.
Five. So we were more sprightly. I'll give us that. And I tell you what, Alex Neil has definitely sorted us out defensively against. Yeah, I'm going to be horrible against crock of shit teams who get one shot on goal, do Football Manager and score one goal and beat us. So Alex Neil has definitely sorted us out defensively. And I tell you what, if there isn't a single team who come up against us for the rest of the season who haven't worked out that he loves bringing Embleton off the bench for that left-footed in-swinging cross, they're in trouble because we scored a couple of goals since Alex Neil's took over with that. And but yeah, listen, it was massive. It momentum and psychology and all that stuff is huge. And we had to win yesterday. And it took us like the second last kick of the game to get that winner. So yeah, albeit we would have liked to have scored 3 or 4 and probably not necessarily deserved, but certainly it should have been more comfortable than that.
Yeah.
Listen, a win's a win, 3 points on the board. Next Saturday is absolutely massive. Absolutely massive. But it's just another day in the life of a Sunderland fan, isn't it?
Aye, it is, mate. Brad, same question to you, mate. How do you assess the game sort of 24 hours or so later?
Pretty much similar to Dave, really. I actually thought we played quite well.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt like as the game went on, it was just going to be like, because you see, I think everyone was checking the table, weren't they, throughout? Yeah. And you see 8th position, and then just before we scored, you see Jeff Wedd had just got a late winner, and you were like, oh, for Christ's sake. But what I want to thank is Gillingham for time wasting from minute 1, once again. Brilliant bit of tactics to allow us to have the 6 minutes added on and ultimately shithouse them with a minute after the goal when they're trying to rush the play. Massive shout out to Anthony Patterson.
Brilliant, that. I know what you're going to say. Brilliant.
Rushes at the edge of the 6-yard box and to take it quickly. Patro walks back over to it, picks it up, takes it to the other side, and they start getting in the referee's ear about time wasting. If that's not a lesson to these teams down that end of the table that want to come and play that way, then nothing is. Because it almost worked, and they almost got away with it. And a bit of credit to the defence. I thought they did stand up quite well. Like you said, it was 25 shots, only 5 on target, so they did limit us to no real clear-cut chances, I would say. But yeah, 80% possession, mate. We were in no danger at the back.
No.
The lads were pretty solid at the back, to be honest. It was nice to see Danny Bart back. Thought he was good in the air. It was more like the Portsmouth performance as opposed to the Bolton one, albeit not as tested. So yeah, it's a different take had there only been 5 minutes added on at the end, because if it came away 0-0, it'd have been a lot. It'd have been similar to a Lincoln or a Charlton review, where you're saying we've had a lot of ball, we've been in the final third without really doing anything. The performance was sort of there, but yeah, we've got the win at the end of it, and that's the main thing for me.
It's mad, really, when you think about like how much a result affects how a performance looks, because like you say, if that goal doesn't go in, you go, oh, and it's Charlton and Lincoln all over again, and you're frustrated, and you're how we're missing those chances, or Corry Evans missed that chance, this chance, that chance. When you win, but I was talking to my dad yesterday, like Dave said, it's nice when you score 3 or 4 and you're dead comfortable and you go, oh, we look a force. But I almost felt like we needed that sort of last gasp win. I mean, I haven't gone to the match with my dad for ages, and I think as people know, I sit with Ashley the past couple of seasons, and I've sat for other people as well for many years, and my dad's recently started coming back to the game. He started enjoying it, and I've managed to get my ticket and stuff. And yesterday was like on my dad's shoulders kind of stuff. He carried us, believe it or not, all 13, 14 stone to me, which I was quite impressed with, to be honest. But it felt like not euphoric, because I don't know how euphoric you can get with a 1-0 win over Gillingham, if I'm completely honest, but it felt nice. It felt like, oh, that could kickstart something. But
I said, I was on Total Sport with Benno straight after the game, and I said, it's for the first time in what I can remember, it seems like forever, rather than a sigh of relief at a go around the stadium, there was actual limbs. There was people next to me cuddling people next to them, people I don't know, cuddling this random lady behind me. My son's jumping, absolutely. It just felt like, as opposed to a relief, it was more like a roar went around the stadium rather than a big gasp. And I've got that sort of feeling, and I want more of that. And hopefully the players now have noticed that that's what the stadium's capable of. You know what I mean?
It's like I say, it's hard to have it, but I did celebrate it quite wildly yesterday, as you do. First question I'm going to throw at Phil. Obviously, I've asked a lot of people their opinions on the game, but I think we're all more or less the same. We're happy. You were quite a big fan, Phil, of Alex Neil being appointed. When I was kind of consoling myself in Budapest that Roy Keane was not coming home, you said, well, I actually kind of wanted Alex Neil from the beginning, and we had that kind of like chat sort of off air. So it does feel like a really boring thing to talk about, Phil, right? But that's Sunderland's 5th clean sheet in 6 games. And while the goal and the celebrations and all that stuff that comes within the main headlines, that's what's going to get the headlines, how important is Alex Neil's Sunderland and the defensive solidity going to be come season end, Phil?
Yeah, you're right. I was definitely the managers who were out there. He was the one I thought actually he's a top coach. I saw some stats earlier today that we've conceded less goals in all of his games than we did in that one Bolton game, where obviously we were even heading the ball into our own net. Danny Bartman being guilty of that. So I think probably we've got to the point. He's had enough games now to think it's not fluke that we're suddenly keeping clean sheets. It probably is to do with the manager. He's obviously getting a bit of a handle on things. We obviously signed, 20 wingers in the last couple of transfer windows. So he realised quickly, shit, how do I get that into a defensive unit? But it's not even that we've had a settled back 3, back 4. He's been moving people in, people out. He seems to have settled on Winchester as a defender, whether that's right back or right side of the 3. Just looks like one of those guys who can just go in there and do a job. And so far it's working. So Yeah, we knew it had to be sorted out. We looking at the stats, we knew that all the teams in the top half of the league, we had the worst goals against record, so it wasn't sustainable if we wanted to go up. That we could keep shipping the goals and keep needing 3 or 4 goals to win a game. So, yeah, I think we've got to give him credit and say he has tightened things up at the back. And did they have never shot on goal yesterday, Gillingham? I'm not sure they did. It was just a case of, can we get a goal in 90 minutes, 96 minutes, 97 minutes, whatever. Didn't look like we were going to. It looked like it turned out to be a Charlton or a Lincoln, but it went the way of the last couple of home games that managed to just find a goal when we needed it. And it was a little bit like a defining moment of the season. We might look back at it. Hopefully we do. Come, end of May, that, remember that goal that Broadhead scored in the 97th minute. The triple, Edwards against Burnley, Liam Miller was against Derby. That might have that sort of repercussion for the season. So hopefully.
It is when you say there about defining moments in the season, and I know it was a championship winning season, but Liam Miller, God rest his soul, his goal against Derby was so massive, and when I look back at it, I always remember that was the moment I just knew. And yesterday's goal did give me a kind of, oh, hang on a minute, maybe I should book the time off at Wembley. I mean, I'm going to listen back to this in 5 weeks' time and be like, you idiot. But nonetheless, while I'm in the moment, I might as well say what I'm really thinking. Dave, I want to kind of throw the same sort of question at you. The goal's going to get the headlines in the same way that Dan Neils and Patrick Roberts did the other week, and all the headlines are going to go towards that last gasp goal and the fact that Broadhead was back and all that kind of stuff. It was another game where we didn't look troubled at the back. And I know we touched on it the other week, and I've touched on it with loads of different people about clean sheets. Sam Allardyce banged on about it when Sam Allardyce came in, and it was boring as hell because I'm sure we drew against Bournemouth 0-0, or we drew against someone 0-0. And he kind of came out and said, oh, you got to respect the clean sheet. And it was just like, oh, for God's sake. And look where Sam Allardyce ended up getting us. And ultimately, that's another long story. But if we take that period of time of him saying it's important that we don't concede goals, because then anything that we do score is a win, or we at least don't lose. And I feel like Alex Neil's a little bit like that in League One. And ultimately, if we don't concede goals, or we have the same run of clean sheets towards the end of the season, we're going up, or we're at least going to a penalty shootout at the end of the season. Are the clean sheets as massive as the last minute winners really at the moment?
I hate to admit it, because I'm all for gung-ho. Let's go and score one more than the opposition. But friend of the show, Bowers, he's going to love listening to this podcast and hearing the fact that I agree with something he says, because he's always ranted and raved about clean sheets and how important they are. And I always try to get away from that for anyone who's old enough, that George Graham style of playing of the best form of attack is defense. And I'm not for that. The best form of defense for me is attack. But ultimately, yes, if you don't concede a goal in the game, you gain a point. Anything after that, one set piece, something going in off someone's cock end, however it works out, you suddenly win the game. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, there's got to be some truth to it, doesn't it? And let's be honest, it was nice at times beating Sheffield 5-1. It was nice to do that. But at the same time, getting beat off Bolton 6-0, it's an embarrassment. Proves, doesn't it? The squad that we've got, people will often question, is the squad that we've got good enough? Listen, on paper, that attacking 5 or 6 that we've got is, for this league, and again, it's only on paper, it's an embarrassment of riches to have that type of talent at this level. When, let's be honest, yesterday we were worrying about Vadine Oliver, who's got 9 goals for Gillingham. Behave yourself. Are we actually worried about someone like Vadine Oliver with 9 goals when we've got Ross Stewart, who's on 7,842 for the season? Literally, it's just one of those. So, yeah, I hate to admit it, because I'm all for scoring one more than the opposition and getting out of this absolute doldrum of the league. But yeah, the clean sheets are massive, and like Philip said earlier, to have conceded less in 6 games with Alex Neil in charge than 1 game with Lee Johnson, it probably tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it?
I like that you called him Philip. Are we using the Sunday names here? David. Bradley, I'll come to you next. I think, to be fair, I do agree, Dave. I've always been attacking the best form of defence. Then I met Lee Johnson. And it drives us batty that we just could not defend, basically. And yeah, it's a bit boring sometimes, but I think Alex Neil probably came in. He seems to me like a no shit kind of guy. I think he seems like that to everyone, to be fair. But he's probably came in and gone, right, what have I got? Right, so we're conceding loads of goals, and I've got that talent up front that I can get a goal out and out. I've got Patrick Roberts. I've got, at the time, would have been Ross Stewart, Defoe, Broadhead. And I know obviously Defoe's gone, and there's a few more players around there. Pritchard, he's probably looking, thinking, hang on, is the lad I paid £8 million for is in this team on a free transfer? Well, if I fix that at the back and they just stop leaking things, surely one of them's going to bang a goal. And football's a simple game played by idiots. I've always said that sometimes. Definitely watched by idiots if you're considering myself, but it does make sense to keep clean sheets. But Brad, it's worth noting that was Alex Neil's 9th game in charge. I think some of those games are a bit unfair to planting him, like Wimbledon away and stuff like that, but nonetheless, it's his 9th game in charge by the stats. It's his 4th win, but his 7th game unbeaten. I know Alex Neil's brand of not sexy football is not being sold on everyone. Slowly but surely, though, that's 7 games unbeaten and another home win and another set of changes that he's made that has meant we've won the game. Where do you stand on Alex Neil's first 9 games in charge, Brad?
I'm over the moon with him, to be honest, mate. I think we were both said when he came in, we were happy with him. The animosity that was going on and people saying about the fans not being particularly happy. No one was unhappy with Alex Neil. They were unhappy with how long it took and how it was handled.
Mm-hmm.
The only downside I can think is if he'd have came in them 2 games earlier, we would not have lost them 2 games, and we would have been sat here looking pretty much solid in the playoffs. But slowly but surely, like you say, I think the football's starting to look a little bit better as well. And I was going to say it before you did. He knows the amount of attacking players that we've got and at times free scoring. So if he can just show the back, the rest should take care of itself. And at the minute, apart from the 2 games which we didn't score in, it's working. Look at Wigan, for example. No one expected us to go there and beat them 3-0. He just kept it tight, solid at the back, and we went and battered them in their own backyard. You've mentioned Wembley already once. I want to say already, I've already booked my hotel. But saying that's one of them where you don't pay until you get there and you don't lose any money.
I was going to say, I've done that on booking.com, but it's free cancellation. I've paid out yet. So.
Yeah. I'm not 100% confident, but I'm confident enough to start looking at to have looked at some decent gaffs. Like, pardon?
You're not superstitious either.
No. But back to your question, Graham. Summing up Alex Neil, you always say you have to judge him after 10 games. And I think in his 9 games in charge, we're 7th or 8th in the form table. 6th, 7th or 8th. One of them. Someone posted it. It's where we want to be, really. Because like we said, teams are going to slip. Some teams are going to drop points. Sheffield were very lucky yesterday. We were lucky, you could say, by getting that last minute goal. There are still going to be twists and turns, but I'm a lot more confident with Alex Neil to lead us through these 6 than I would have been with Lee Johnson, for example. I'm happy for once.
Phil, obviously, you were actually a fan of Lee Johnson. I think it's fair to say people listen. Me and Brad weren't. Dave was in between. You quite liked him in many ways, but like I said before, you also really liked the idea of Alex Neil when he came in. So it is early to judge, but that's what we're going to do anyway. 9 games in charge, 4th win, 7th unbeaten. His 1,000,000th clean sheet, something like that. Are you more pleased and more confident that we've got Alex Neil in charge as opposed to the man who came before?
Well, we should probably start by acknowledging the fact that we've today had to give up the only trophy we've won in our lifetime, the Papa John's, which obviously, Lee Johnson led us to glory in last year. So we no longer have that in the entrance of the Stadium of Light. So God knows when the next trophy will be, and whether Alec Neil brings that to us or not, who knows? But I just, it feels a little bit like the egg timer. You turn it upside down and the sand starts running, and I just have this fear that he's, as Brad said earlier on, if he'd come in, if they'd just given him it 2 games earlier, has he got enough time to get us to a point where, one, we're going to get in the playoffs, because it is now looking like 2 from 4. Yeah, I think Ipswich have probably dropped out of the race now yesterday, losing at home to Cambridge. And as Dave said at the beginning of the pod, next Saturday is absolutely huge. Something inside, I don't know. I've got a feeling we've got a reasonable record at Oxford. I never seen
really good one. We've only lost once.
Yeah. I never really feel whether we've been in the same league as them or over the years playing up or down against them that we've had a problem at Oxford. So probably for that reason only, I'm feeling relatively confident going in there next week, and we are in a run of form as far as keeping clean sheets are concerned. We know had we scored against Charlton and Lincoln, it would have looked a hell of a lot different, and we should have won both of those games. Like yesterday, it was literally attack against defence. I wasn't, obviously, if I hadn't got that late goal, things would look a lot different, but we were actually really good. What did we get? 25 shots? We just weren't picking the right options when we were getting in there, or perhaps we didn't have enough people in the box when we were getting in behind them. And somebody else mentioned about the season turning on Broadhead getting injured at Arsenal, and I wasn't having that. That's why we've fallen apart, is because Broadhead got injured. But who knows? If he can stay fit for the next 6 weeks, he might make all the difference. I love the way he took his goal. I mean, he did everything we'd just been asking Ross Stewart to do for the previous 95 minutes. Ross Stewart has always ran his heart out. He was all over the pitch, but he actually spent a lot of time not in the box. So the crosses were coming in, and it's, well, you've just laid it off to whoever, and you weren't there. But just to finish off on Alec Neil, and this is not the first time, the substitutions that he makes. I mean, we've watched Sunderland a long time, and you pull your hair out with some of the substitutions managers make. Think, what game are they watching? When he threw those 3 lads on in 65, 70 minutes, was it? It was just, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what you needed to do. And all 3, I think, had a part in the goal. Yeah, Gooch laid it to Embleton. Embleton swung it over, and Broadhead headed it in. I mean, whether, luck or you make your own luck, I guess. But if you can't be good, be lucky, I think the saying is. And he's making a good habit of it.
I think his substitutions. Yesterday, I was like, oh, I can't believe he's taken off. I think he took off 09. I thought, oh, why is not taking Evans off? And yada yada. Why is Dan Neil not coming on? But like, what do I know? And it's numerous home games now where he's made changes. Like the Fleetwood game, he brought Defoe and 09 on. Defoe got the assist, I think, more or less for 09. It was his shot that got deflected and went into 09. 09 scored. Dan Neil came on and scored in the game against Crewe. Patrick Roberts came on and scored against Crewe. That was his 2 subs then. He brings on these subs and it just works. It's like, I don't know the science behind it. I don't know if it is just pure luck, but it gets to a point when he's doing it so many times, you think, well, maybe it's not luck. Like, maybe he just actually knows what he's doing. I absolutely loved talking about the way Broadhead took the goal. I really loved the way Alex Neil took it as well. I love that, like, little air header that he did. That was brilliant. Shades of like Scottish Bobby Saxton there for me. I thought it was fantastic. And his celebration, there's certain people I like at Sunderland, which is weird because I'll never meet these people. I'll never probably have a conversation. And if I do, it'll be on this podcast in about 5 years after they've left, long after I've made a judgment on what I think of them as a manager, if I'm so lucky. So I can't really say I dislike Lee Johnson as a person, but he wasn't for me. He wasn't for me. Just the way that he spoke and things that he said about my football club wasn't for me. On the flip side, the likes of Allardyce, Peter Reid, Roy Keane were for me. Alex Neil, whilst he hasn't had that level of success of the aforementioned names I've had there, Alex Neil and what he's saying and the way he started and the way he says stuff and the way he changes stuff is for me at the minute. Things can change, but I love the kind of straightforward black and white conversation. There's absolutely zero grey. I know this sounds weird for me as officially my job being a journalist, but his disdain for the questions he gets in the press conference is brilliant. He might as well just say, I actually can't be arsed, lads. I just want to win the game. And I've got quite a lot of time for that. I like the fact that I know exactly what he's thinking. I know exactly where he's at. And as long as he keeps winning games and keeping clean sheets, then you know what? That's the full package for me. I'm quite happy with it. Dave, I'll come back.
Sorry, what's that layman's term? You can't bullshit a bullshitter.
Aye, you can't. I mean, he's just straight up like.
I agree with Graham. I said when he first came in, I think it was a couple of interviews. I said it's such a refreshing change for hearing a manager just tell you that water's wet and the grass is green, not give you the explanation why water is wet and the grass is green, and on occasions, depending on the weather, it might change colour. Then it'll go back to a different colour. You know what I mean? That's what we had with Johnson. So it is very refreshing, and I do, like you said, I do love watching his interviews because sometimes he just doesn't want to answer them. He's just like, look, we're focusing on this game. Then the next reporter will say, yeah, but do you ever keep an eye on the rest of the teams? No, I told you before. Next question.
Like
it's just great.
You guys will always tell me better because my memory is absolutely shot from drinking too much alcohol. But genuinely, like, did we not win 1-0? And he came out and he said, listen, we were shite.
It was
effectively
Crew or Fleetwood. He was just like, not good enough.
I think it was Fleetwood, wasn't it? Yeah, it was, yeah. And he just generally came out and he said, we've won the game, we've got the 3 points, we've done our job, but we weren't good enough. What more can you want? That's how we see games.
Like, for me, famous saying that I've always loved since I was a kid, because my nana used to say it, Lee Johnson was the far end of farting and which way it blew. Alex Neil will just tell you that it was a fart and it stunk. And that's kind of, sometimes that's just what I want. And I mean, Lee Johnson, I'm sure, will work somewhere else. Obviously he knows what he's doing. He had us playing some lovely football at times. But for me, Alex Neil's a fit that I like. But Dave, we'll have to touch on one player that came on. We've touched on the clean sheet. We've touched on the defence. We've touched on Alex Neil. We've kind of flicked around him a little bit. But Nathan Broadhead was one of those substitutes. We haven't seen much of him since that night at Arsenal when I thought he was brilliant. And I thought he was in really good form before that. Like 60 minutes or so charting, and he unfortunately broke down again. I do worry a bit about his fitness based on recent history, but how important is it going to be if we can keep Nathan Broadhead fit, get him match fit, get him in the side based on that like cameo from yesterday when I thought he was absolutely tremendous?
There's, again, I'm with and I'm against Brad with the whole turncoat thing because I love Defoe to an extent, and I was around for the days of Phillips and Quinn and Johnson and Summerby and a really nice golden era of football. I mean, imagine saying that was a golden era of football club when he finished 7th in the division. It's not exactly great, is it? But Jesus Christ. But like, we did have a golden era of players. It was refreshing to watch and really, really nice. And I still have a lot of admiration for Jermaine Defoe. But he came out and he said, and no matter what the reason is, and there's only a select few who will ever know the reason why Defoe retired at the stage that he did. But he came out and he said, there's players in there who I'm probably standing in the way of through reputation. And let's be honest, it was probably aimed at Nathan Broadhead. He probably knew that he was coming back to fitness. He probably knew he was going to be in and around the matchday squad. And there is an element of Broadhead, and there's not too many players within our squad. And maybe I'm harsh, maybe I'm not. There'll be a lot who agree with me. There'll be a lot who disagree with me. But Broadhead is one of those who, in terms of how you watch him play football, he's better than the level that we play at. And we've got a few of them, to be honest, albeit on loan, albeit on contracts till the end of the season, and see where we go. The likes of Roberts, the likes of Pritchard, the likes of Stewart. Let's be honest, it's our attacking force. There's a good 4, 5, 6 of them who are just too good for this level, which probably scares us a little bit because we feel as if we don't get promoted, we're going to lose Ross Stewart. I've said it myself on the pod. I think we will. He's got too much to offer for someone to go out and go, right, I'll tell you what, I'll take a £2.5 million chance on him, because that's probably what it's going to cost him to get from a League One football club. And Broadhead's another one of them. You can't tell me watching him over the course of the season, and yes, his fitness worries are a worry. There's no two ways about that. But there's teams out there, whether it's someone coming down from the Championship with a big budget, whether it's someone who's sitting in mid-table, maybe he's like a QPR or bloody hell Luton challenging for promotion in the playoffs, to be fair to them. But you can't tell me clubs like that aren't watching someone like Nathan Broadhead and going, he could make a difference, to be honest. There's definitely something about him. And hey, let's be hopeful in the fact that there is something enough about him to be fit enough and actually make a difference for us. I think there is. I think there's enough. I've said it a few times on the podcast. Like, I think Alex Neil's time will come next season. I really hope, and I'm going to put myself on the line here, if we get in the playoffs, and I can't believe I'm saying this, and that's the big question, if we get to the playoffs, I think Alex Neil gets us over the line. And Saturday will be a huge test because, if I'm not mistaken, Oxford are quite clearly, by a good 7 or 8 goals, I think they're the top goal scorers in the league quite easily. And that's saying something because Rotherham have had a good year. Wigan have got games in hand, so they've clearly had a good year. But Oxford score goals for fun. Saturday just gone the exemption. But I genuinely think Alex Neil's got enough scruples about him, and I love a good word like scruples. I genuinely think he gets us over the line. So, yeah, that's my prediction. But my problem is getting to the playoffs in the first place.
Crystal ball there, Dave.
It's just his head. It's just his head, Phil.
I was believing. Get in the playoffs. It's done.
Literally just his head. But yeah, you know what? I mean, Alex Neil's got form, and everything feels great after a win, doesn't it? But it's been a while since a defeat, to be fair. MK Dons, I think.
I will just reiterate, Saturday is the massive one. If we get beaten on Oxford, I turn back on everything I've just said.
Huge. It's absolutely massive. I think winning the games that we, on paper, should win, and getting results at Oxford and Plymouth are massive. But we are going to sort of take a wee break and go into a part 2. Sometimes we do this when we ramble on a little bit too much, which tends to happen after A, a heavy defeat, or B, a nice cheeky win. So I'll leave you with some sort of interlude. You normally get a death metal one. I haven't decided what I'm doing yet. So we'll leave in part 1. We'll be back in part 2 in about 30 seconds to a minute. Hello and welcome back to part 2, which is basically only a part 2 because I am too tight to pay for the Zoom premium and it runs out after 40 minutes and we talk a bit of shite before we actually record. But thanks for coming back. What?
I was just thinking money's too tight to mention.
Money is too tight to mention. It certainly is. We ended part 1 chatting about Nathan Broadhead. So we'll continue with it before we have a couple of negatives for the sake of balance and then chat about whatever we fancy after that, pretty much. But Brad, you were next in line on my list. Nathan Broadhead, we touched on it loads before about how important he is. We all seen how important he is before he got injured. He's been away a long while to the point where we sort of started to wonder if he could come back and make any impact. He made a massive impact yesterday with his goal. Keeping him fit is he potentially the difference between playoffs and not the playoffs?
Definitely. Like you say, if he was there for the Lincoln game, would we have nicked a goal? It's just them little fine margins which we have missed him lately. Going back to just before his injury, like we said, that night at Arsenal, he ran a Premier League defence all over. Like he looked like he wasn't out of place against the Premier League side. He was phenomenal. And credit to him yesterday, Alex Neils came out and said, he asked him on Friday, do you reckon you've got a start in you? And he said, no, I could probably give you 30. I don't want the same thing to happen. And then listening to his interview, he said he was like, he was so frustrated. There was a lot of emotion in his celebration because he was so frustrated that he rushed himself back. So I think he's now in tandem. His brain and his body are working together, which is going to allow us to get the most out of him, as opposed to starting him and then losing him for possibly a lot longer. If we get 30 minutes next week, and then obviously we've got the Easter weekend, so if we can maybe rest him for Shrewsbury and play him with Plymouth, ease him in, and then if it's still in our hands by then, we've got him back up to match fitness, and then we can start using him from the start if we need to. That's my personal opinion, but he is massive for us. Plus, like we've said, takes the burden off Ross Stewart. I mean, when you've got a 22 goal a season striker, and then you look down your list, and I think everyone else in single figures? Much,
yeah, more or less, mate.
There's no one, even in double figures, to show like it's not all about Ross Stewart. And if you looked previously, the Cheltenham game at home, for example, was a perfect example of how good Broadhead can be for the team without even scoring a goal. And we got 5 that night, and he was absolutely phenomenal. That would have been a 10 out of 10 performance had he got a goal that night. And that is what he's capable of. And we need to make sure we don't burn him out as well, or make that injury flare up at the worst possible time. So to answer your question, yes, Broadhead is absolutely massive for us. And I think I put a bold statement out there before Defoe would be the one to fire us to promotion. If we're to make the playoffs and get to Wembley and go up, Broadhead will, from now until then, I think Broadhead will probably be the person that everyone looks back at and thinks, thank fuck he came back, because he was massive for us. Pritchard was brilliant yesterday as well on his first game back.
Yeah, I mean, he really looked like he hadn't been away that long. Obviously, tired a bit towards the end, and Alex Neil took him off, which was good management. But you mentioned about the goals that we scored, just to put into context how probably important Broadhead is before we move on to a couple of negatives. Ross Stewart has scored 22 goals. He's got 2 assists, and he's played 44 games, 0.53 goals per 90, 171 minutes per goal. Second in the list, actually, Brad, is Nathan Broadhead, who's had 3 injuries to my knowledge. When he first came, then he got another hamstring, and then he's had obviously the most recent one. He's scored 8 goals out of 18 appearances. It's 0.63 per 90, and he's got the best goals per minute in the squad of 143, a goal every 143 minutes. After that, you've got Aidan O'Brien. Obviously, 3 of them were at Blackpool, but then you got Embo and Pritchard, but Pritchard obviously is there on 10 assists, which is probably not surprising anyone. And then it's just a list of Winchester, McGeady, Neil, Onai, and Diaku chipping in with 3 and 4 here and then, and you're down to your ones. So that alone statistically shows you how important Nathan Broadhead is, as you've just touched on it. Phil, obviously, we spoke off air about this, so I'm going to come to you first for the controversial opinion of the day, because I know it's coming. Couple of negatives for the sake of balance. I've literally wrote here, we say it often, but Corry Evans. I haven't even thrown a question. I hate to have any negatives in it, but I'm just not impressed by him. I don't like the way he is on the pitch. I find him quite cowardly in the way that he plays, not as a person. I don't know him. I find as a leader, he's not really there. But you've got a bit of a different take on that, Phil. What is your weird and wonderful take?
Weird and wonderful, right? Okay.
It's going to be, isn't it? If you like him.
Maybe maybe this is my Mr. Positive head coming on here, because the centre midfield has changed quite a bit in each of Alex Neil's games, and he seems to be the one constant who's there. Whether we play a 3 at the back or a 4 at the back, he's in that too. I'll be honest, you'll probably remember that chance yesterday where it was pulled back to him and all he had to do was slide it in the bottom corner and he put it in row T. I'll take a guess at probably. It wasn't my favourite then at that point. But there are certain players and teams who have a job to do, and it's probably not scoring goals in this instance. I don't know if you saw the World Cup draw the other night, Didier Deschamps. Well, I'm not comparing Corry Evans to Didier Deschamps, but if you remember, Eric Cantona called him the water carrier. And, again, he's not a Kante or any player like that, but teams need somebody who just sits in the middle of the park, not doing anything particularly glamorous, maybe taking the ball in and passing it 5 yards. But teams need players like that. So, yeah, I feel a little bit like the case for the defence. I don't have a very strong case. I will absolutely put that out there. But you're not going to have 11 guys who are going to get the ball like a Patrick Robertson, nutmeg a couple and flip it around the next guy and whip one in, all that sort of stuff. You need whether it's the Corry Evans or whoever it may be in the centre of park in some games. And you mentioned there's a couple of guys we've spoken about already today who didn't even make the squad yesterday. I mean, you've got Neil and Matete on the bench. Doyle hasn't made the squad. Diaku, who came up earlier on, wasn't in the squad. So all of a sudden, Pritchard and Broadhead coming back, we've got options. And if we can, and I talk about the egg timer thing because it does feel like I'm not sure we can beat that. I think is there enough time for us to sneak in before that runs out? But whether you like it or not, guys, you're going to see Corry Evans playing in the centre of the park for the next 6 games if he's fit, because Alec Neil obviously sees an important role for him, whatever that may be.
I mean, to challenge my perception of Corry Evans, you could say that he is 100% the number 4, the sitter, the defensive midfielder, and we're not conceding goals. So Alex Neil might tell me, well, you don't like him for X, Y, Z, but he plays this important role for me, and here's the stats. So I suppose there's the counteract to give you an opposite comparison. I know he didn't compare him with Didier Deschamps, but nonetheless, someone referred to him yesterday as Darren Gibson with hair, which I thought was very good. And I thought it was a little bit too much of praise for Darren Gibson, to be honest, for Corry Evans, to be honest, at the time. And also, if we're going with water carriers, I think maybe Adam Sandler in The Water Boy, potentially. Let's hope he has a similar trajectory, a similar level of story as The Water Boy is. And if you haven't watched The Water Boy, Adam Sandler hasn't always made terrible movies. He's sometimes made really good ones. Watch it tonight. Brad, you're obviously a bit more like me. You have the opposite opinion. You're quite shy in bringing it forward. You're never that cutthroat with stuff. But Corry Evans, you're not a big fan. You're not a fan. Why is that?
Can't stand the bloke. I think he's just a coward on the pitch. He's not a leader. He's probably the worst captain I've ever seen, not just at Sunderland, but in any level of any football.
Fucking hell.
Hold on. I need to just call that out a bit, Brad, because we all saw that Wickham game where he went and virtually got his head decapitated in the name of the red and white shirt.
That's a fair point.
Obviously, so I think he's a coward. He might not be the best footballer in the world, but I think
the way he plays, I think, is quite cowardly. That's what I've got to be. If that's where you're coming from, Brad, I think that
on the pitch, I mean, he might be he might be lovely to sit and talk to and have a pint with. But to lead your team to promotion, nah. Like I've never played at the highest standard, but a captain for me on the pitch is someone who, if you're having a little bit of a bad game, he's the one that comes and has a little word in your ear. He just doesn't do it.
It's like is the problem that he's got the armband?
He should never have been given it, but I just don't rate him as a footballer either. Can I think of any war that are worse?
I think I think we're forgetting a really vital component here. What about the leadership team?
Half of them have spent the season, haven't they?
Well, Flanagan's at Shrewsbury, so he's not doing much leading at the moment.
The leader of the leaders is Corry Evans. And we got rid of people hate, like, don't. Well, I get the impression a lot of people don't like him. But for me, Max Power, it's just someone like him. Wasn't blessed with talent, but he was a leader. And especially when you watch the games behind closed doors last season, you just heard him non-stop as a captain and leading the players. I know that they've got a manager there and the professional footballers should be able to do it. But everyone talks about how good of a captain Kevin Ball was and the influence he had in making the team better. We've had skippers like Catamol, Bally, and I mean, they're the two that come to my head. Even the one season it was Eo Loiksana. He got it straight. He got the captaincy straight away, and he was a captain. He was a leader.
So who would you give it to, Brad? Who would you say last 6 games you're the captain? Do you not think that would cause more problems than it would solve?
Well, it's not going to get taken off him, but if he was dropped, it was just barely right for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same for me.
And a lot based on recent performances. And I sit behind one of the goals, and I've praised him so much this season now, which he's come on, and now he actually sounds like a leader. Is Anthony Patterson? He is constantly shouting at his defence and organising and telling them what he can see behind them. And if I ask anyone who sits around that area that can hear, Anthony Patterson did not stop shouting every time he's been up in the South Stand when I've watched in the last 4, 5, 6 games. And that's a credit to him.
Whilst we're on Patterson, I think it speaks volumes by the fact that I haven't even wrote it down as a question. And normally if Patterson played previously in the past, it would always be a question because he's not someone who's played regularly and yada, yada. He's number one for me, without a doubt. Sorry to Hoffman, sorry to Burge, but Patterson every single day of the week. Dave, you wanted to add something to that, mate? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick one. The one thing I will say is you've got to remember we're 40 games into a season and it's a very, very long time, 40 games in football. But I tell you what, Corry Evans, and I've said it before in a previous podcast, them first 6 games, he was a breath of fresh air. He was very, very good. I remember certain games when we were a little bit lackadaisical, a little bit flat. He flew in with some pretty strong challenges, winning the ball fairly, and kind of lifted the whole crowd around the place. Now, I'm not a Corry Evans fan in any way, shape, or form, but there's got to be a bit of equilibrium to everything. And I think up until that 6th game, and I think he actually got injured flying into a challenge, if I'm not mistaken, and it ruled him out for a bit, and he hasn't quite been the same. Now, the bits that we'll never see is, has the management asked him to do a slightly different role? Have they asked him to do a slightly different job? The chances are that they have. You know, Lee Johnson obviously wanted us to go and press from the top, wanted us to get right in their faces when they had the ball in their own defensive third. And I think we've probably changed slightly from that. And I think Johnson changed from that, if I'm honest, through his tenure. And I just think, listen, it's a League One football club. There isn't too many of these players who I would care if they did or didn't leave at the end of the season, which is a horrible thing to say. But I think just for a little bit of balance, I think the first 6 games, Corry Evans did give us a little bit of a lease in a mobile centre midfielder who actually put a bit of a challenge in and put himself out there. And unfortunately, he's faded away. How old's the bloke now? 30, 35, 34, something like that.
Younger than
that, is he?
Only 31, 32.
Is he actually?
Sorry, Dave. What I will say, to try and balance my approach, if I can, although I've just absolutely fucking rinsed him, is I see him for 90 minutes on a Saturday. He might be doing what Alex Neil's telling him to do and doing it very well. Yeah. But I'm seeing it from a fan's point of view, what I want to see from my captain and from someone in that area. And for me, if you're going to put O'Nien in there, you've got to be Matete alongside him, or it's got to be Dan Neil. I think Matete can do exactly what Evans does, but do more and be better at it. I think 09 could probably do it as well, although I'd now see him as probably a little bit more of an attacking one. Dan Neil's probably the only one that you couldn't go like for like without getting a bit more, because I think Dan Neil, again, is more about getting on the ball and driving forward. But we've got 09 and especially Matete, who can do what Corry Evans does, but I think do it a lot better. But if Evans is doing what Alex Neil's telling him to do and he's doing it well, then fine. But it's just not what, as a fan's perspective, what I want to see from my captain. So just to bring myself back down to earth, because I think I got a little bit carried away there after a couple of stellars. Sorry, Corry. You might be a nice bloke, and now you get picked for your country, and your brother's a brilliant footballer, and you've played at a higher level. More about football than probably I've ever dreamt about. But nah, I'm still not a fan of you. But good luck in your future endeavours.
Do you know what we're going to see? You know what we're going to see? And there's a pattern emerging here, and you've made us all laugh, Brad, there. Well done. Alec Neil, honestly.
I'm only saying that because I'm aware this will be going out tonight, and me and my son's going to the Player of the Year awards tomorrow, and my voice is very distinct. So players in this.
Digging your hole. Digging your hole. When you're in a hole, stop digging, Brad. There's a saying.
I'll have to go and go, Corry, can my son have a photo?
In all seriousness, easy for me to say. I've had a couple of Stellas as well. You're going to see experience. Alec Neil is going to put experience in the team. He's hinted at it in his interviews, post and pre-match. He's going to put the experienced lads in there. You saw Bart coming back in yesterday. The opposition manager yesterday referenced it. He said, Wright and Bart at the back there, we knew that was going to be hard to get through. So I think Neil and Matete will have their place in the next 6, hopefully 9 games. But I think you're going to see experience in the side in the next few games from the start. Anyway,
I think what we'll do is we'll just cut that segment of Brad rinsing Corry when he did, and when he's lifting the playoff trophy final, we're just like, sorry, Corry. On a serious note, to be fair, I started the conversation. I will openly agree with a lot of things Brad said. I don't like the way he conducts himself on the pitch. But prove us wrong, Corry. That's what we want. That's what we're there for. We're all behind you nonetheless. Doesn't really matter whether we think you're a good player or not. We're still behind you, mate, 100%. We normally do what does the result mean in the context of the season, but we bloody well know what it means. So sum up your feelings, Dave, in 2 words based on Sunderland's 1-0 win in the 95th minute against Gillingham.
You're going to hate me because I can't do it in 2 words, but it means absolutely sweet fuck all unless we beat Oxford, or at least, unless we have a positive result against Oxford. So yeah, that's my 2-word answer.
That was not 2 words at all, mate. That was about 40, but nonetheless. Brad, stick to the rules, please. 2 words on the result of the weekend.
Weird but wonderful.
That's 3. Phil, give me your 500-word essay, please, on your thoughts on Sunderland's win on Saturday.
I can do it in 2. Fucking massive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I'm also not going to have to put a disclaimer about the sweary words on here, but I think that went a long time ago, to be fair. But as always, thanks for joining us. Been quite a fun one to do tonight, actually. Probably going to have loads of editing because we spoke over each other about 40 times, but nonetheless. Thanks for sticking with us. The positive is we all wanted to say stuff because we're all feeling quite positive, and that's nice. Up the Alex Neil. I'm a big fan of Alex Neil, and just as a roundabout, not to try to make it too serious here, but thanks everyone massively for the well wishes this week. Obviously, people who follow my personal page will have seen that I had my 2nd operation this week on something that I very much hope I get the all clear from very, very soon. And the well wishes and people checking in on me has been very, very nice and very much massively appreciated. Made me feel very supported. So thanks for doing it. And as for the person who keeps disliking the podcast, fuck you. Thanks very much. And we've been What the Falk.